I guess this is just how intense it gets, and I must be like progressing, like maybe I'm 8 centimeters at this point, I don't know. I was like, your body was seizing up like you were having a fit. I was just closing my eyes and just like trying to breathe through these intense contractions. I remember like when you're induced, your contractions are way more intense, so that's what I was also trying to like think. At a certain point around like six-ish, I was like, listen, I know the gas in there has been working, but it's actually not touching the size at this point. Can I please have the injection, and can I be checked as well, because there is no way I'm still 5 centimeters because this pain is crazy. Someone came in to check me over, and then they just weren't responding to me regarding the extra pain relief, and I was like, felt like I almost had to like beg them for more pain relief. I was like, I'm not letting go of this. The guest in there, I was like, I'm not letting go of it, but it's getting a lot worse. Can I please have that? And they were like, taking your blood, we're waiting for the results to come back, and then we can let you know, because there's certain stipulations for the injection and we cannot give it to you until we know what your bloods are saying. That's when they told us that I had an infection, and that's why I had this cannula in my hand, antibiotics. That was why I was freezing cold, because I had an infection. How is that even possible? I had no idea this was a thing. All I could focus on was the fact that they weren't giving me more pain relief, and that the pain was becoming unbearable, like absolutely unbearable. My whole body was seizing up and shaking like during these contractions. I knew I wasn't like at a stage where I could feel this pressure that I've been taught, which is when the baby's head is there and you feel like you're gonna push. And they had asked me actually, they were like, do you feel like you need to push? And I was like, no, I just feel like I'm in like so much pain and I really need pain relief. And it was horrendous. The midwife who came and checked me, she was like, well, the good news is you're now 7 centimeters, which obviously is good news because I'm progressing, but this pain is just crazy. It's horrendous. It's around 7 a.m. at this point, and they're not giving me any more pain relief. And then the blood test comes back, and like I said, they said that you've got this infection, and because you have this infection, you're not viable to have the injection in your thigh. That could cause problems with the baby, cause further complications, as if the baby wasn't complicated enough. At that point I was like, well, if I can't have the injection, you're telling me I'm at a 7 and I still need to get to a 10, like no chance. Like around 7ish, I remember that was when, honestly, genuinely, the only way I can describe it is I felt like I went into a different dimension of pain. I felt like I left my body. I felt I couldn't really see anyone or hear anything other than just searing pain. It was the most horrific thing I have ever experienced in my life. I felt like I was going to die. That's as bluntly as I can put it. And my mum came in around 8, half 8. I remember seeing her come in, and then there was another contraction. They were ramping up and much more closer together. And like I said, these contractions, because of the infection as well, were just taking over my whole body. I had my eyes shut and I was just like making the most gut-wrenching sounds. I've been told, and I was being taught, that when you are in the down stage of labour, when the baby's like coming out, then these sounds escape you that you've never heard before, like you've never heard yourself make before in your life. But those sounds are coming out of me at that stage, and I was like around 7 centimeters. It was so weird. It was like an out-of-body experience because I could hear the sounds. I was not in control at all of what was coming, the sounds that were coming out. It was very, very, very scary. Again, I really had accepted that I was going to die. I was telling my mum I was going to die. I was telling Iqra I was going to die. I remember looking him in the eye and saying, I told you I was going to die during childbirth. It was very, very traumatic. And I spent, like, just pausing on the story there, I spent the first 2 weeks after the birth saying, wait, I'm not going to use the word trauma, I'm not going to use the word trauma because, you know, I would like more children in the future, inshallah. But actually that's what it was. It was traumatic. Like, I came so close to death. It was a near-death experience. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. But then there was a point where it's like, well, I'm going to die. I accepted it. I'm gonna die, please save my baby. And that's what I was saying. I was like, please save my baby. You're not giving me any pain relief. Like, I have accepted like that this is the end for me. Just please, please, please save this baby. So I've been in labour since, like, active labour since 10:30 the night before. We are now at like 8:30 and baby's getting distressed. Her heart rate's going up, and obviously they've got me monitored and her heart rate's there, my heart rate's there, her heart rate is spiking, and everyone's getting quite tense at this point because this is becoming a very complicated birth. At this point they call one of the head doctors in. You know, he introduces himself. I have pretty much no idea who he is, like as in his, I don't remember his name. I hardly even notices that, like, I'm out of it. Like, I am not really, no, I can't even explain it. Like, I'm conscious, like I was still awake, I was feeling everything to the max, but I couldn't process things in the moment at all. He came in, he was like, I'm gonna check to see how far along you are. I've checked your notes, so let's see the situation and then let's take it from there. Checks how far dilated I am, and I cannot even believe, even saying this out loud, it sounds insane, but he basically said, I know that the midwife told you that you were a 7 2 hours ago, but I'm really sorry to let you know you're actually at a 5. And I remember like looking at Iqra and then looking at him, looking at my mum, and I was just like, what on earth? So does she lie or what? Like, what is going on? Because I'm feeling like I'm going to die, and you're saying I'm 5 centimeters when I was at 5 centimeters before, when I was not under any sort of pain relief, and I was talking fine, able to walk, you know, I was able to move about. How is this possible? And I've watched a lot of birth stories on YouTube, but I have never ever heard anyone say in their birth story that they went backwards during their labour. What had happened was, because of this infection which was taking over my body, obviously the baby is important to the body, but the body protects itself first. So the body was essentially saying there is no way that this body is ready to push this baby out, or able to push this baby out with the amount of pain I've been in and the lack of sleep and the lack of food as well. So my body was essentially shutting down the labour. It was insane, and I can't believe that can happen, but it did. Literally, I'd got to 7 centimeters dilated, and then the infection was taking over, so my body was undilating me backwards. And imagine, these contractions are so strong, my whole body is being taken over by each contraction, and I'm in like a fit-like state. Astaghfirullah, like it was absolutely terrifying. And then it was the most heartbreaking thing in the world to hear that I was back at a 5, defeated, completely defeated. What he did say then was that we had 2 options. The first option is we take you in for an emergency C-section, and you and your baby are going to be absolutely fine within 20 minutes. Or the second option is you go for an epidural. There's a lot of complications and risks with an epidural, but what it could do is help your body to completely relax and then see if it can get to the dilation stage. They called the person responsible for the epidural run essentially, and I just remember she came and like sat next to me, and I'm still having these completely like mortifying, horrific contractions and making me sounds, and I'm just like clutching onto the bed, and she's speaking to me really loudly and slowly, and she's explaining all the risks of the epidural. She needs me to be able to repeat them if I want the epidural, so I can prove to them that I understand the risks, because there are so many risks. And obviously I had no idea what was going on around me in terms of the people, but during this time my husband was trying to speak to people he knew, like, and our family as well. All my family were making so much dua. My dad was able to read Surah Maryam at least 2 times in this time, because my birth had become so like complicated, and everyone was just like praying and praying and praying that I was fine and baby was fine. I could not for the life of me even repeat my name at this point, and she kept pushing me to try and give her some of the risks. I just couldn't do it. And then at this point my midwife was brilliant. She really advocated for me. She was like, can you not tell she's exhausted, she's not slept, she's not eaten, just give her some time, give her a moment. And for some reason, like obviously it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's like mercy and kindness, that I was able to, like when she stepped away, I was able to slightly process what she said, and when she came back again in 10-15 minutes, I was able to repeat enough of the risks. I do want the epidural, and the reason why I think I went for it, obviously I was not in my right mind at all, but I think I just felt like I had been through so much, and I was still going through so much at this point, that I just wanted to try like that one last time, because initially I never wanted a C-section, and now in hindsight I feel like my opinions have changed a lot on C-section versus vaginal birth, whatever. I said from the start, like, I really do not want a C-section, I want to avoid a C-section. See, there were risks to the epidural, but I also knew that there's a lot of benefits to the epidural, and if it works, it can work really well. The next stage was to get me to the edge of the bed, change me into a hospital gown, and then everyone to hold their breath and pray to God that I do not move, because my contractions were, like I said, literally making me seize up. I was still out of it. I was still in the most intense, horrific pain I've ever been in my whole life. Another dimension of pain. I remember Iqra was on this side, my mum was on this side, they were both holding my hands, and then there was a specific nurse whose job was literally there to look me in the eye, and I can't for the life of me tell you exactly what she said or did, But I just remember being able to really zone in and focus on her. She was so calming and so positive and encouraging. Somehow I was able to just focus on her, keep completely still, and they did it. They managed to put the epidural in. I didn't feel it go in at all. If you'd asked me like even a day before, would you consider the epidural, I would have said absolutely not. I'm not having a massive needle stuck inside. Listen, I genuinely thought I was going to die. At that point, a needle was just nothing, absolutely nothing. So alhamdulillah, the epidural was able to be put in properly. Then I was pulled back into position, and I was also very, very terrified of the feeling of being paralyzed. However, that wasn't the case with the epidural they put on me anyway. I was able to wiggle my toes, I was able to like shift my legs slightly. Obviously you can't stand, you can't walk, you can't be in any other position but upright like this, which is not the ideal position to give birth. It was not what I wanted at all for myself, but we'd got to this point due to factors completely out of my control. So I was very grateful that like within 40 minutes, guys, all of that pain, I just felt like that dimension of pain that I was in, I was able, like the epidural was able to just bring me right back down to my body. Suddenly I could see everything in the room again. Suddenly I could notice there were 7 people in the room, whereas before I had no idea who was in the room, who was not in the room, other than I was focusing on Waqar and my mum, and that's it, and maybe like one other person if I really tried hard. Suddenly I was able to speak, and I was able to realise how sore my throat was from all these sounds that were coming out of it. At that point, like, staff were coming in and they were like, I thought you were having the baby like 3 hours ago from the sounds that were coming out of this room, and how are you doing? And I was just like, oh my goodness, I am so sorry if I've said anything wrong or offended anyone. I genuinely thought I was gonna die. I was not in my right mind at all. And they were like, listen, you've had a very difficult time in labour so far, you've been doing amazing, you're so strong, your breathing's brilliant, like keep going, you're doing, you know, they're all super encouraging, alhamdulillah. So epidural, alhamdulillah, basically worked. Then Dr. Rami said at 1:50, he was like, 1:50 p.m. he was like, right, I'm going to give you exactly 1 hour to let the epidural do what it needs to do. Her heart rate is still far too high for my liking, so that's why we're going to give you 1 hour. If your body is able to do what it needs to do after the epidural has now successfully been put in, then we can try and get this baby out. If not, we're going for an emergency session. Again, everyone's making dua. My body is relaxed due to the epidural, thank goodness. I did get the shakes, I didn't know that was a thing as well, but the whole time I was like this, the whole time. And at this point I remember feeling my waters break as well, which was such an uncomfortable feeling on the bed because it's just liquid all over the bed. It's horrible, but obviously good sign because it means that baby is on her way. Just kept praying that baby was going to be fine, because obviously her body to be in this process of labour for this long, it was too long. And let's be honest, I was absolutely shattered at this point. We're in the afternoon of the next day. I am so close to being delirious, it's unbelievable. I'm just super grateful at this point that the epidural was working. So an hour passes by, he comes in exactly at 2:50 and he checks, and alhamdulillah, everything's how it should be. I'm 10 centimeters dilated. My cervix is finally very soft and open, and her head is at a +2, which is the optimum position for a baby's head to be for the delivery. So again, my feet are up in stirrups because of the epidural. And because of how exhausted I am and everything like that, it has to be an assisted birth, which again I really did not want. But that basically meant that they did an episiotomy on me, and they tried the suction cup at first, and sadly that did not work. He did say to me, he's like, this is a time now where it has to be 99% your effort, like we are all behind you, but you need to do the work here, you've got this is the final home stretch. They tried the cup, didn't work, and then sadly it was onto the next tool, the medieval tool, which I cannot believe is still a thing. But it, you know, alhamdulillah, I was born through forceps, my brother was born through forceps. It was a forceps delivery, episiotomy, forceps delivery. I obviously didn't feel anything because thank goodness the epidural was working. They had checked, by the way, they kept checking all the time, spraying me with cold water and checking in, alhamdulillah. The actual pushing part of things, because obviously it was an assisted birth, I think the pushing process was a lot shorter than it would have been if any of my labour had been anything close to what I'd wanted it to be. I thought to say this, but your body is still contracting. Like I said, I went from back up from a 5 to back up to a 10, but instead of these completely body huge spasms and fits that I was having, I just felt this dull pressure down there, but that's it. It was insane how little pain I was feeling through the epidural. And I was like, wow, the first time in my life I completely understand why so many Americans who talk about the birth story are like, I was like, put that epidural in me right now. And then they just sit back and they do their makeup and they chat to the camera and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, because literally, like, you don't feel a thing basically other than just a tiny bit of pressure, which is nothing. I was very happy about that after going for that. There's a big light shining there. Wakara's on this side, my mum's on this side, they're holding my hands. My mum is squeezing my hand so hard. I'm like, Mum, please, you need to stop. And by the way, she was a brilliant birth partner too, I have to say. Like, she came in at the 8:30 mark, and no one could have predicted how upside down my labour would have gone. But she was so brilliant. She was massaging my feet. She was being really encouraging. And I remember at one point when I was still on gas in there, I was like, why did you do this 4 times? Why would you do that? And she was like, Iqra, preserve your energy, please. She's like, you were all worth it. You were all worth it. And I was like, no, we were not worth it. Like, how could you put yourself through this? The doctor is like, there should not be any sound coming out of your mouth, and you need to just push down as hard as you can. But I just remember, like, being so determined. He said that I have to put in 99% of the effort here. This is the final part, and then inshallah I'm going to see my baby. Literally, after going for all that, like, I was just like, oh, I could just, like, whatever energy I could muster up after being so exhausted. And yeah, it's like, just I did my best, and the contraction came, and boom, the head was out. Didn't obviously feel anything. Then the next contractions come in, they're like, push, and like nothing happens. But then he pushes a red button and he's like, right, there's going to be lots of people coming into the room now, but don't panic, don't worry. And his voice is like shaking. I remember feeling Wakara's grip like slightly loosen on my hand and looking over, and he's gone like pale as a sheet, and I'm just like, but the head's out, like, what's going on? My mum is like crying on this side, and then they're like, right, another contraction's coming, push, and I pushed, and then alhamdulillah, like, the body was out, and they're like, oh, it's a beautiful baby girl. Obviously I knew that, but put the towel over her, and then they quickly handed her over to me. And as this is like my first memory of seeing my daughter, was like, I'm lying there, and like, as he's like handing her over, I hear her say like a cat, like she just made this like this noise, and every part of me that was so tense and had been through so much was just melted in that moment. And I just took her, and I was shaking, and I still had this like candle in my hand. She had her eyes wide open, and she was looking at my mum, and she was looking around, and she wasn't crying, but like obviously we'd heard her make that sound, and she was there. Her heart was beating, and it was like by far like the best moment of my life was that moment. Alhamdulillah. And I actually cannot believe I am crying now, and I've cried watching every single birth video that there is out there that I've watched. I've cried, but I didn't cry, and neither did Iqra, because we were so shook at that whole experience. We were so exhausted, and we were so like I'll be honest, I was so drugged up as well. I did not cry, but I was so relieved. I just vaguely remember hearing like one of the midwives saying, right, now we're going to put the injection in to deliver the placenta, which I didn't want that to happen in my birth plan. I wanted to try and deliver it myself. Absolutely not at that stage. I was like, didn't even respond. They did it, and the placenta came out, didn't feel a thing, didn't see it, didn't want to see it, because I'm scared of like gory stuff and all that things. Placenta was out, then they were sewing me up, which I didn't feel again, and all I could just focus on was my beautiful, alhamdulillah, my beautiful baby girl. She was there, and like my mum. We were just in this absolute daze of just extreme joy. And then I remember once the doctor had left, they were like, right, are we able to like quickly weigh her and just like check her measurements and stuff? And like they're like, oh, and I was like, oh, what time was she born? And the way they check it is actually the baby's being monitored while you're being monitored. So as soon as the baby is out, the monitoring stops, and then that's the time of birth. We didn't realise that, because we're like, actually, considering how intense and crazy birth is, whose job is it to like be checking the time? But that's what makes a lot more sense as to how they determine like what time the baby's born. It was such an intense, scary experience, but wow, it's insane like how much you go through as a mother just at the start to have your baby on this earth. And all I could think about afterwards for a very, very long time was, this is why Jannah is at the feet of mothers, because the lengths that women go to get pregnant, sometimes, you know, with infertility and IVF, in their pregnancy with HG and PGP and all sorts of other health conditions, and then labours like that, which just push you right to the edge. I genuinely thought that was my last day on this earth. Like, I just wanted them to save my baby girl, and that's it. And to like be here today, alhamdulillah, healthy, alive, well, loving motherhood, not feeling like 100% obviously, and still like having some complications and issues, but overall just completely in this bubble of feeling better and being able to enjoy it is just the biggest blessing I could ever think of, alhamdulillah. That was my birth story. I'm not going to go into postpartum and all the rest of that. The battery is flashing now. A little bit stunned even just to like have spoken about all of that. This video is well over an hour long, but that was my birth experience, and obviously it was what it was. It was so far from what I would envisaged it to be. Alhamdulillah, we're both safe and healthy. And like I said at the start of this video, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not test you beyond what you can bear. And boy, did I bear some things that day. And in the postpartum experience, I did not enjoy my recovery process of all of that. Absolutely not. That was very difficult. I spoke about that on Instagram a lot, and TikTok. But yeah, I'm going to leave the video. Let me know if you guys have any questions. And I don't know how to end this now because it's been so long since I have sat down and filmed a video. Every single day I wake up, I look at her, and I just feel so blessed and so lucky and privileged to be chosen to be her mum. Like, she is such a gorgeous, funny, cheeky little baby, and I've never ever felt a love like this in my life. I don't think I would want to say I'd go through that again, but was she worth all of that near-death experience? Absolutely yes. I cannot imagine my life without her now. It was a pretty traumatic experience, and my biggest prayer now is that if I'm blessed with any more children, I just pray that that was my worst birth experience, and whatever is to come next is going to be at least 50% less traumatizing than that. Let's make dua. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions, or if you have any other videos that you want me to do regarding postpartum, etc, etc, because this will be the final video in my pregnancy series, which is crazy. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. It's been really, really rewarding actually to see so many people comment and say that I'm now pregnant or I'm going through this now, and it's so nice to see a Muslim perspective, and I'm so glad. Like, I currently at the time of filming this, I've got up to the haul video, but there's so many videos to come. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And yeah, thanks for, if you've got to the end, leave me this emoji just so I know that you listened to the whole thing, because you guys are the real amazing people. I will see you guys in the next video, which is going to be the start of the most exciting project of our lives. I cannot wait for this next series on my channel to begin. Alhamdulillah. Honestly, I can't wait. Right, okay guys. I love this. Take care.